Good afternoon. Oh, no, y'all still asleep. Good afternoon. Oh, y'all in the back, I can't hear you. Good afternoon. All right, all right. Okay. Yeah. I'm acting like I'm DJing up here. I'm trying to take his spot. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing a man who has shown what it takes to fight for Americans. One who remained loyal to the Democratic Party, even while facing adversities along his political journey. Nah, he didn't jump ship like somebody else. Yeah. A man who is no stranger to representation, as he has served in the Texas Senate from 1993 to 1991 to 1983 to 1990, and then went on to serve as United States Congressman from 1991 to 2011. That's service. That's right. He is one that never took his constituency for granted, whereas he worked with local representatives from both sides of the aisle for many years to ensure the needs of our communities were met. I recall many times he and my deceased father-in-law, former Commissioner Lester L. Gibson, conversating about the needs of our communities. Together, they were able to achieve common goals and many political successes. Now, I don't speak with him daily, but I know he is still serving in many capacities. Please don't get it twisted. Don't think he's just sitting at home twiddling his thumbs waiting on the next chess game. That's not him. Never will be. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, it's time that I introduce a man who will be speaking next. Standing in the blue corner, reigning from Waco, Texas, by way of Corpus Christi, Congressman Chet Edwards.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What a great crowd. Great crowd. Thank you all very much. Thank you, and I love you. The most important thing I want to say today is that your presence here makes the most eloquent statement, the most powerful statement that will be made today. Thank you for being here and having our voices heard. Judge Lee, thank you for your kind introduction and more importantly for your public service every single day for our community. And I know my colleague and friend Nick Lampson was introduced, but I will tell you, as long as I live, I and my family and all of us will owe a debt of gratitude, because I can tell you firsthand, Nick Lampson is the person in announcing against Tom DeLay that ran Tom DeLay from public office, and that was a great service to our country, and we're better because of it. You know, for those watching, we here come from all walks of life, and we come with differences on specific issues, but our strong common bond that unites all of us today is our deep commitment to our nation's democracy and the fight to preserve it. And that's why today is so meaningful. We the people. There's a reason our founding fathers chose those three words to begin our Constitution. Not the Congress, not the President, not even the Supreme Court, but we the people. Because they understood we the people are the bedrock foundation of our democracy, and it's time for our voices to be heard again. Now, while I was elected at 30, I'm old enough to try to put a few things in perspective. So let me go back in history. August 9th, 1974, 51 years ago, President Richard Nixon resigned in disgrace in the wake of his enemies list and his disrespect for the rule of law. After taking the oath of office, President Gerald Ford said this, and I quote, "My fellow Americans, our long national nightmare is over." Well, my friends, I could have never dreamed that 51 years later, 51 years later, you and I would wake up to the nightmare of another president with an enemies list and who disrespects the rule of law. President Trump has directed the Department of Justice to investigate his so-called enemies, whether it's the free press, members of Congress, universities, former employees, law firms, and others. Instead of fighting inflation for working families as he promised, President Trump is carrying out a revenge tour against all those who would be a constitutional check and balance on his power. That is disgraceful and it's dangerous. President Trump's assault on democracy and our country's future, in my opinion, is more far-reaching and more threatening than even the crimes of President Richard Nixon so long ago. And we, the people, cannot and we will not be silent. We will not be silent about what President Trump is doing to our democracy, our economy, and our American alliances across the world. For 28 years, with deep gratitude to you, the people of Waco and the citizens of Central Texas, I had the unbelievable privilege of representing us and serving in the Texas Senate and the U.S. House. Let me speak honestly with you. I know firsthand that government is not imperfect, and those of us who serve in government are not imperfect. But it is up to us to remind our fellow neighbors and citizens, government is not inherently evil. It is not. It is inherently imperfect. It's inherently imperfect, but it is crucial to our way of life and even our free enterprise system. I know, you know that government should not and cannot try to solve every problem. But just imagine for a minute if you would, our families and neighbors' lives without Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Just imagine for a moment what our home, Waco, would be like without I-35, Lake Waco, the Waco VA Hospital, and loans and grants to students at Baylor, TSTC, and MCC. Government is not our enemy. If we go back to 1981, while I respect what he did in standing up to the Soviet Union, and he deserves respect for that, President Reagan said in his first inaugural address that, quote, "Government isn't the solution to all of our problems. It is the problem." Over the past 44 years since that speech, a lot of Republican leaders, not all, but a lot, have evolved from not only preaching that government is the problem, to government is the enemy, that somehow the deep state is aligned against everyday hardworking Americans. And we need to understand that growing cynicism toward government over the past 44 years made it possible for a gilded billionaire like Donald Trump to be elected president. For middle class working, I agree. For middle class people working hard and struggling to get by over the last 20 or 30 years, working 2 jobs for less income often. This cynicism was what allowed a man to get elected that would have never gotten elected at any other time in our history. And while this is hard to believe, the polls show that working families actually came to believe that he cared for people like them because he was going to go after this evil enemy, the deep state. And I can tell you from my own 15 personal campaigns that the single most important poll question in any poll I ever took was not how I was doing against my opponent, but does he care for people like me? To my fellow Democrats, and I agree, I don't think he does. But to my fellow Democrats, I want to say, as we rebuild, we have to find a better way to communicate with everyday citizens that we in the government truly care about them. We do, all of them, hardworking people who work in our factories, our grocery stores, our restaurants, our farms, urban, rural, and suburban. These are all good people from all religions, all faiths, all genders, all races that are working harder but falling behind, and they just haven't felt the government and Democrats are on their side. And we've got to do better selling that message that we do care. Now, there may not be a lot of them here physically today, but I want to speak to my Republican and independent neighbors who voted for Donald Trump, people whose votes will determine the outcome of future elections. We need to speak to them. And this is what I would say to them if they were here. I can understand your frustrations with government, and yes, at times with we imperfect Democrats. I know we're far from perfect, but it is okay to say that Donald Trump is not doing what he promised you he would do. Chaos, tariff taxes, and disrespect for the rule of law will not make America great again. To all of us, after decades of growing cynicism toward government, it is important, I think, including today, to remind ourselves what the role of government really is in our country. Don't take my word for it. I can't think of a better source of the proper role of government than the Preamble, the first words of our Constitution. Listen with me to these words. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Meaningful words. That is the vision our founding fathers had for the role of government. Well, let's look at President Trump's term in office. What he said and done, I agree. Let's look at President Trump's record in light of the standards, of the high standards set by our founding fathers in the Preamble. To begin, we the people of the United States. Well, we the people, the bedrock foundation of our democracy, we voted in 2020 to elect Joe Biden as president. And he was elected. But President Trump did not respect our votes or us. He tried every way he could, from not just inflaming an angry crowd of insurrectionists on January 6th to invade our U.S. Capitol and stop the counting of electoral votes, a process that led to 140 police officers being put in the hospital and 5 of them giving their lives. Trump also called election officials in Georgia and Michigan to try to stop the counting of the people's ballots. Donald Trump was the first president in American history to disrespect the peaceful transition of power And in doing so, he disrespected you and me, we the people. So on the standard of we the people, Donald Trump failed. The next words, in order to form a more perfect union. In the U.S. House chamber where Nick and I serve, often when we have contentious issues, I look up at the ceiling, and etched in glass is the American eagle. And in its claws are these words, our national motto, E pluribus unum. And I reminded myself, we are from many. Yes, we are a land of diversity. We are from many, but from many, one. Great presidents, such as Abraham Lincoln, have famously reminded us to have malice for none and charity for all. Lesser politicians find ways to divide us, to forget our common bonds and focus on our differences. Lesser politicians call the free press and those who would disagree with them enemies of the American people. You know, Americans with different viewpoints, we are not each other's enemies. We are fellow Americans. We are a union. And by the way, our founding fathers knew we were not perfect, so we should not try to whitewash our nation's history. It's wrong. You know, our founding fathers realized our shortcomings. They knew, including slavery. But they challenged each generation, you and me, to make of us a more perfect union. And in doing that in each generation, expanding the constitutional rights from a few privileged white male landowners to all Americans from all backgrounds, to me, that is what has made America a great and a good nation. In my book, real patriotism is not the old bumper sticker that some of us have seen, the slogan, America, love it or leave it. To me, real patriotism is America, love it and make it better. And that's what you are doing here today by your presence. So for a more perfect union, President Trump has failed us. The next words, establish justice. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but you know what? It does not take a lawyer to understand that calling the January 6th Capitol police officers thugs and pardoning the insurrectionists who tried to overturn a free and fair election has nothing to do with justice. You're right. Having the president personally direct the Department of Justice to go after individuals, universities, and even law firms, that has nothing to do with establishing justice. And let me say, denying any individual, whether it is Abrego Garcia or you and me or our neighbors, the right to due process before being shipped to a horrible prison in a foreign land has nothing to do with establishing justice. On establishing justice, President Trump has failed. The next words, ensure domestic tranquility. I can be brief here. The daily chaos and division of the Trump administration makes the Keystone cops look like a well-oiled machine. It is self-evident on ensuring domestic tranquility. President Trump has failed. Provide for the common defense. President Trump has actively undermined and insulted our NATO allies and our other allies. He's insulted those who we have worked with and fought with for 80 years to protect our nation, including NATO, which was created by General Eisenhower and has kept us for 80 years, 8 decades, from knowing a World War III. There is a big difference. There is a big difference between America first and America alone. And on the common defense, President Trump has failed us. Promote the general welfare. I'm not sure where to even begin on this one. Maybe I should just painfully say, when you go home today, look at your 401k for your family's retirement security, or your children or grandchildren's college education fund. Let me just summarize. Number one, the deepest plunge in the stock market in the first 3 weeks of April since 1932 in the Great Depression. Devaluation of the U.S. dollar by 10%. Consumer confidence at a historic low. Number two, putting Elon Musk Mr. Chainsaw and Mr. Cheesehead, in charge of cutting programs for Social Security, the VA and veterans, Head Start, emergency FEMA aid, and food assistance for starving children abroad and hungry children right here at home. Number three, undermining the most respected universities and university research programs in our country. One of the greatest single competitive advantages our nation has. And fourth, the Trump tariff tax that is one of the largest tax increases on small businesses and consumers in American history. It's not even close. On promoting the general welfare, President Trump is a failure. Securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, those are important words. President Trump might say he supports the Second Amendment, but I think he's forgotten about the First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendments. President Trump doesn't like a 60-minute segment on him. He suggests CBS should lose its broadcast license. President Trump doesn't like the clients of a law firm, so he threatens their very existence. He doesn't like his former federal employees saying the 2020 election was not fraudulent and not stolen, and the president directs the Department of Justice to investigate that employee. Let me ask you, is it now a criminal offense to say that the 2020 election was not stolen? If so, Elon Musk and Doge better build a lot of new prisons, because there are going to be a lot of us in it. Threatening people's and organizations' right to free speech and due process, they don't protect liberty, they threaten it. Having checks and balances on the executive power is a fundamental principle of our Constitution. It is the reason we rebelled against King George III. So on securing the blessings of liberty, President Trump has failed us. To my fellow citizens, Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, don't listen to my word. Just judge President Trump by the words of the Preamble of our Constitution and the role that government should have in our great country. Finally, let me say, if you look at autocrats and would-be autocrats, they want we the people to feel powerless, to lose hope. We the people cannot let that happen. And with your presence here today, you are not letting that happen. What can we do to help protect our democracy? Well, you're doing it today. You're making an important statement with your presence here. But we can't stop here. We can't feel good about this march and go home and feel good. We've got to keep speaking out, let our elected officials hear from us, and on every election day, we've got to exercise the right to vote, for we the people truly have the power in our democracy. Let me finish on a very personal note. One of the greatest honors I had, and you gave me the privilege to represent you in Congress, was to work with our military men and women and families and our veterans. For over a decade, until just recently, I had the privilege and the honor to be the co-chair of the Arlington National Cemetery Advisory Committee. Every time I visit those hallowed grounds of Arlington, I feel inspired and humbled. Inspired by the sacrifice of those Americans, and humbled by the question of how can we live a life worthy of their service and sacrifice. We cannot match their service or the sacrifice of those who are buried at Arlington National Cemetery. But I believe we can honor their sacrifice for our nation, for your family and for mine, by exercising our voice as we the people of the United States. And with your voice, we will be a better country, and we will overcome this nightmare represented by President Donald Trump. Thank you, and God bless you. And God bless America. Thank you.